Whether you're married or single or poly or ace, or hanging out with swingers back at your place, listen to us as we give no fuck on Tinder and Bumble and plenty of yucks, trying and having no luck, because we all know dating kinda sucks. Sarah and Adam are two of a kind. He says stupid shit and she doesn't mind. They're not doing this show to make any buck. Life is a chicken whose feathers he plucks. Why does it work? Well, here is the crux. They both know dating kinda sucks. Dating kinda sucks.
I'm Adam Heath Avitable.
And I'm Sarah.
This is Dating Kinda Sucks, a podcast about dating, sex, and relationships. This week, we'll be answering questions sent in by listeners. Enjoy the show.
Welcome. How's it going?
I know. Happy Mother's Day.
Oh yeah, it is Mother's Day.
It is. We are recording this on Mother's Day, May 10th, I think. Yeah.
It's so weird to only do this every other week because I don't know the last thing we really talked about. And then just getting out of this routine and then getting back into it only every other week is just a weird flow for me. But
it is funny because especially we've been doing little mini, like 15-minute Patreon episodes in between where we're just recording us just chatting on Skype and putting that on our Patreon. So we've talked about some of these things and the regular podcast listeners are behind. So we need to kind of catch up with everybody. So I'm trying to remember from 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago was April.
Jesus.
It was
last month.
Yes, last month. It was like April.
What is time?
April 26th or 7th or something like that, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe you had. I'm trying to remember.
So lucky for you, I actually had to re-listen to last week's episode. The last episode we published because I had no idea.
Oh, good.
So what the concept of time was. Yeah, what the concept of time was, or what I said and haven't said, or whatever. And it's kind of weird too to talk about him because I'm so used to not talking about him because we're not recording every week, so right. I don't share anything that's happened. But
codename is Master of None. I remember that much. And I remember that we gave him the codename. It must have been 2 weeks ago we gave him the codename because he did that whole, hey, I'm going to Whole Foods. What can I get you? And he brought you wine. So it's been a month since we first went on our first virtual date. Okay. So you might have given it sooner. Who fucking knows at this point? But so I'm still seeing him. It's been 2 weeks later. The last thing we talked about was we had a social distant date at a park and we had lunch and we at that point had never hugged or kissed or fooled around. So spoiler alert, those things have happened. So was that how we ended it 2 weeks ago? Was that you had gone on that social distancing date and then I think maybe you had another date with him planned?
I had a date with him planned the next day, but I didn't mention it on the episode because he was coming over to my place to make brunch and we were going to hang out. And I was afraid of getting a lot of backlash from people for breaking the whole social distancing thing because, he's coming over. But the more I thought about it, and I mentioned in the last episode too that he wanted to come over and I said no because I got freaked out. And I said, my friend had said the comment of short-term gains lead to long-term can have long-term consequences or something like that.
Right.
So then I got scared and I didn't invite him over. And then we had only been doing virtual things except for the Sunday.
Virtual things.
I hate that everything's just so fucking dirty. No, we weren't doing those virtual things. Sexting, but so
that's dirty. Let me just say before you get into it, someone in the Facebook group posted a post, and I don't know if you noticed this. I know you probably didn't because you don't go on Facebook.
Actually, I did see this.
Oh, okay. Where he's like, "Hey, what was that thing that Sarah said about short-term something?" And he asked me because he knows that I reply usually in the group, and I was like, I don't remember what I say after we record, much less what Sarah has to say. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe you should go re-listen to it. And another listener actually was like, oh no, this is what she said. Like they actually knew it. And I didn't remember you saying that at all. Cause everything just like disappears as soon as we're done recording, but
wipe your brain.
It's a good line. The short-term gains have long-term consequences.
Right. Yeah. So I guess the reason I didn't want to bring up, and we're having brunch tomorrow in the last episode was because I was afraid of
some backlash from people because of, coronavirus. But for both of us, we haven't seen anybody else outside of just one another. And the only place we go is the fucking grocery store. So, and we'd already, hung out a couple times, just socially distancing ourselves. So I felt more.
And it's been a month. Like it
had been a couple weeks at that point. So I invited him over for brunch, and me, I made a little cheese plate, and then bought like
because you can't cook, so that's the
I know. Oh my god, so fucking embarrassing, and I don't think he knows this. So I have 0 cooking utensils in my apartment. I
remember you telling me this.
I have maybe 2 frying pans, 1 pot, and all this stuff. And he came up with the idea that I was gonna make the dessert type dish, and then he was going to make the main course, and then I was going to do cocktails, and then I did the cheese plate as kind of a surprise, and he liked brie cheese, so it was all good there. But he's asking me, how do you feel about crab cakes and whatever, and he's asking me if I have some of these ingredients so he doesn't have to go out to the store and buy them, and I had nothing, literally nothing. And then he was asking me, do you have a cookie tray or one of those deep dish baking pans? No, don't have that. I have just like a flat thing.
I just don't understand how you don't even have that. Like, that's just like a basic thing.
I know, but I just barely cook. So I was embarrassed for myself when he was asking me those questions. So
Good.
I had to.
Good, you should be. You should be mortified.
To my friend's house, and I asked her for a laundry list of things like a nice spatula and just nicer. I didn't have a mixing bowl. I have bowls, but just
just to clarify, she's the same age as you are, and she has these things, right?
She's a year older, but yeah.
okay. But yeah, okay. All right.
I just don't give a fuck about things in the kitchen, okay?
Sure.
Anyways, so she gave me all of this shit, and she was like, you better give it all back to me, which I did. But so he came over, and I actually had stuff to cook with, and I felt like an adult, but he didn't know that I borrowed it from my friend. So if he ever comes back and tries to cook in my kitchen, he's going to be like, what happened to that mixing bowl? I don't have it. But so we made brunch, and that was the first time actually that we had hugged one another. It was really we had joked about our hellos and goodbyes were always awkward because we were trying to socially distance, but that first flow, knowing that we could hug one another, I was like, okay, I guess we're gonna hug. Okay, cool. Got that out of the way.
Sure.
But there was obviously a lot of sexual tension at the brunch. We were cooking and having, joking and whatever. And then after we got finished eating, it was like, well, what else is there to do here? So, and we both got kind of drunk too. I made really strong cocktails, and we both had a little bit of a hangover after. But we got a little physical. We didn't have sex or anything. And he had to go home at a certain time, so we didn't really even have that much time to hang out.
Why he had to go home, because right now he's living with his parents who are very paranoid.
His stepmom is very, very paranoid about coronavirus, and so he's been lying to her, saying that he's going for long walks and going on hiking trails and stuff. So he'll block out 4 or 5 hours, and he tells me, I can get away with this length of time, but if it's a rainy day and I'm telling her I'm going hiking, she's not gonna fucking believe it. But she knows about
that you're a dirty little secret, basically. That is fantastic.
I know, but he said that his parents know about me, and then I'm like, dude, are they really? They can't be that dumb. There's no way they're that dumb that they think that you're not taking a walk and coming over to my place or whatever. But anyways, so yeah, he had to leave and go back home. And so that was that day. And then
whatever day that was. Yeah.
That was. And then a couple of days later, we actually did go on a walk around his neighborhood. So he lives in an area where we can do longer walks around different college campuses, and it's more of a walking trail, I get, not even a trail, but just a nicer area to walk around. So he met me at a certain spot, and we walked around for probably 2 hours, and then we left after that, and I drove home. It was nice, but it's just different because I want to go on a real date, like I think we've exhausted the social distancing dates. We've done a picnic, we've done multiple walks, we've done like the brunch thing at my house. But yeah, so we had that walking date, and then a couple days later he came over to my house again. So it's like every Saturday or Sunday he comes over the weekend, because he actually can get a longer amount of time to be out, I guess, versus
Sure.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, where he can only take like 2 or 3 hours to go walking. I say that in quotes.
Yeah.
But so he came over last Saturday and things got really physical, and we've talked a lot about sex. Oh, I don't know how I want to get into this because this is like the meat.
This is the meat. This is the meat of the story. That's what we're gonna say?
This is yes, that's the meaty part of the topic or the subject or whatever. Can you tell I'm getting nervous? I don't know how to talk about this.
I know. Look at you. You're not used to this. You like usually Sarah's just like, yeah, so then I just sucked his dick and he came in my mouth and whatever. Then he fingered me for a little while and and like you'll just come out with it. And now you're actually getting like embarrassed.
I know, because I haven't talked about him at all. And then this is a very different sexual experience for me than any other guy I've ever been with. So, and him and I have talked about it.
Is that what it was? He put his dick in your butt?
The butt? No.
Oh, okay.
Shut the fuck up. He is more of a dom. And so we have had conversations about the BDSM community, and he was like, well, what do you know about it? And what are you comfortable with? And we had all of these conversations even before our brunch. We talked about it a little bit, which I didn't.
And you've mentioned before that you like being thrown around a little bit. You like some choking, like you're in the bedroom with consent. You are into that type of thing.
Right. But I've never really met anyone who actually knew what the fuck they were doing.
Who was that douchebag? You're that one douchebag who called himself like he thought he was like Christian Grey.
And then he actually legit strangled me after not asking for consent, and I got up and fucking left, and it was terrible. Right.
And not realizing that Christian Grey is a terrible example of BDSM, and actually that's just physical abuse. But okay, so
yeah. So that's been my experience with guys who I'm a dom or I understand the BDSM community type. But he is very different, and his biggest thing is making sure that consent is there. And like I've never had a guy just ask for, which is amazing, ask for so much consent during anything physical, like even just like us undressing, and like never have I ever, which is a really good thing. It's raising the bar, because I'm like, oh, I
consent should be a continual check-in. You continually check in with the person. Yes. Yeah,
but it's really, for me, it's never been like that. So I really appreciate that from him, and he knows that we've had conversations, actually, if I could talk about this on air, and he was like, yeah, I don't care, like put it out there, like I think it's important to talk about.
Sure.
But so he came over last Saturday, and knowing that we didn't really do that much during the brunch, we just kind of, it was a little aggressive, but it wasn't anything, I wouldn't even want to say the word crazy, but it wasn't anything like out of the ordinary, I guess. And I feel like that's
wrong. It was fun enough that you were ready for more.
Yes, there you go. That's better. I'm getting so nervous here. So he came over last Saturday with a backpack full of stuff. And he told me, I didn't tell you this, did I?
No, the backpack full of stuff. Okay, that's funny. I didn't expect you to be like, oh, he brought his toolbox, came over.
He was telling me he was going to bring over some toys, and he was thinking about different scenarios and different things we could do. So he had planned certain scenes, I guess you could say. And so he came over and pulled out like lubricant, and like obviously I said like condoms, so you had like lube and condoms, he had a couple butt plugs, he had blindfold, he had like the straps.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Multiple butt plugs. Were there more butts involved than I'm aware of?
No, he had like 2 different size ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he had the restraints that go underneath my bed, which are still on my bed, by the way, that I've used multiple times. So I told him yesterday, I was like, I fucking love these things. The fact that I haven't had these before blows my mind. And he was like, I mean, you can keep them on as we continue to, fool around.
So they go under your mattress, and that way you can strap on your legs or arms or whatever, and then they just hide under the mattress.
Yeah, it's on each side, so there's one on each corner of the bed, and then you can change the length and make it tighter, a little looser or whatever. But like trying to masturbate, you can't use the third one for your hand. TMI, because you're just like stuck here. I can't.
Wait, did you try to masturbate with the restraints on?
Yeah.
Hold on.
But only for my legs. This is so. Oh my god! I did not expect to go. God.
This is intriguing. So you decided since the restraints are there, you might as well try to use them when you were by yourself.
Absolutely. Oh, and he was like, "You should try it at least." So I just used the ones on my legs, and I didn't use the top ones for my arms.
Yeah, right. That would be kind of hard to do.
Well, he had made a comment when he was over before he left him on my bed. He was like, "Are you gonna like use all four?" I was like, "How the fuck would I do anything?" Who's doing anything to me at that point if I'm completely tied up? That does nothing.
Yeah, I guess if you'd have to wear something or something like that could be a whole thing. Like wear something that you could turn on and then restrain yourself so you can't like do anything until I don't know. That's
yeah, but then how the fuck once you're done you're like and then you can't get the vibrator out of you.
Yeah.
I was not gonna do any of that.
When the cops find you and you're just dead from multiple orgasms.
What a life.
She came herself to death.
Anyway, so that's been my life recently. So that was last Saturday.
Well, you can't stop the story there.
I feel like I've already shared so much here. Everyone's envisioning me fucking tied up on my bed right now.
I mean, so then you experience an actual Dom sub experience?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I was
talk about that, maybe more technical terms. Yes. You don't have to.
Yes. I won't cut it off so short. So after we had kind of finished what we were doing, I didn't realize there's just this whole process that he really took the time to walk me through. So, there's constant check-ins and consent every step of the way, which is great. Totally on board for that. And then after, he was like, it's really important for aftercare, just so anything that was said or anything that was done, like it doesn't mean like I don't like you or whatever. So I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest. I was like, aftercare, what do you mean? Like I'm just in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, we just like kind of clean up, whatever. Right. But we really cuddled.
Because the old guys, the guys you've been in the past would just throw you a wet towel and be like, here you go, and then walk away, or not even do that. But yeah, so. Yeah,
and they're like, okay, well, it's time for you to head out now, or I think we should be done here. There wasn't ever really after in anything I've experienced with any guy, and I didn't even have sex with Master of None. We just.
It's even more fitting that we're calling him Master of None now. By the way,
I know. I was thinking about that earlier today.
Especially because you're kind of a nun, so like Master of None, it has like a dual meaning there. I'm really liking that. Okay.
I hate you so much. Anyways, so aftercare. So he explained that, and so we cuddled and we talked, and I really processed a lot of stuff because he was telling me, you could feel differently than what you thought, and there's just a lot to process. And sometimes he was like, it's okay if you want to cry, it's okay if you are angry, like it's okay to just let those feelings out. And I just had no idea. So then the next day.
Okay, I have some more questions. So before
stop with your questions.
Yeah. So there was no actual like intercourse.
Right.
But there were orgasms, and I know we talked about this in our episode about sex and everything, like how the millennials, etc., like what sex is kind of redefined. At one point, you guys were naked. There were restraints. There was all types of the orgasm. There was aftercare. There was like everybody got off and had a good time. There were hours of being naked in bed, all sweaty and stuff like that. At what point do we call that sex? That you just like, yes, we had sex. I don't have an answer. I'm just asking what you think about that.
I just put like vaginal sex as just something. It's just different. It's just different for me. And
okay. So there's no penetrative sex, but you basically had a full day of sexual experience.
Correct. Yes, a very full day of sexual experiences, and honestly, probably the most. I think that was, and you and I have talked about this off air. This is the most intense. Last Saturday was one of the most intense sexual experiences I've ever had, and not in a good or bad.
You were kind of like shook in a good way when I talked to you the next day, like.
Yeah.
I mean, you were
still shaking, still shaking in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No. I just wanted to kind of talk through that because I think it's important for us to start identifying sex versus, like penetrative sex. Like there are different things. That it was a sexual experience. There was maybe not intercourse, but it was sex, like as a whole. If you describe sex.
Yeah, and it definitely helped us get obviously closer. And I've never trusted someone that much in bed before either. Like even ex-boyfriends and guys that I've really opened up to, I've never felt that close with someone before. And he knows that. I just feel really comfortable around him. And I think that part of the reason is he's always asking for my consent. He's like, are you okay with this? He's like, we don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. I don't ever want to force. If you don't feel comfortable, he's like, we don't have to do this. And like we have like, instead of like a safe word, it's more like colors. So it's like red, yellow, and green. So like red is stop, green is go, and then like yellow is like, okay, slow down, like let's take a pause.
So it's like one of those all you can eat meat places like Texas State Brazil where they give you the little cards, and then as they're done, they serve you too much meat, you put a red card down, and then when you're ready, want more meat, you put it's like that.
They have a yellow card too?
They don't have a yellow card. They just have the red and green.
Have the red and green, yeah. But so I mean, it was just setting that foundation, always asking for consent, and then having the aftercare and just talking about everything just I think made us a lot closer. And then after he left on Saturday and everything was great there, I noticed that it was, ups and downs with coronavirus stuff, but I noticed that I was feeling a little off the next day. Like, yeah, everything was great after he left my place, but I just felt really different. And I started doing research and I realized there's this thing called, which he knew about and we just hadn't talked about it, but there's a such thing as a sub drop and a dom drop. So after you finish these scenes and there's that intense endorphin rush, you can experience like a depressive state or some kind of a drop, and that could be hours after, that could be the following day. And I didn't really know what it was, but I was thinking a lot about everything that had happened the day prior. And then I started doing research and I was like, oh fuck, I think that's what I'm experiencing right now. And I had no idea. And we talked about that as well. And then I was reading articles about how, some DOMs don't necessarily get the aftercare that they need because a lot of the aftercare is focused on the sub, not necessarily the DOM. So I've actually learned a lot just from my own experiences and then doing some research based on how I've been feeling.
Some people take a quarantine and they learn how to crochet. You take a quarantine and you learn about BDSM, and who's to say what is better? I feel like you might have picked the mother load there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so okay, so talked about subs and DOMs and all of that. Okay, so after
going through your checklist of what we talked about.
Well, I want to make sure it's in like chronological order here. And yes, for people listening, I'm still sweating because I just got
you are.
All of that.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can tell like she's like red. No, you're not really red, but you keep waving yourself.
It's hot in here. So then a couple days after he came over that Saturday, we did. So this was this past week actually now. We did a to-go drink date. So we grabbed to-go margaritas and chips and queso, and we sat in this little gazebo and did like on this college campus and just hung out and talked. And it was funny because obviously there were a bunch of people walking by and we're cuddled up right next to each other on the same side, just sitting eating chips, talking.
Wait,
and
sitting on the same side.
I knew you're gonna go there.
What the fuck, Sarah? After all these years, all these episodes, and you were sitting on the same fucking side.
It was like a park bench. It would have been very far away for him to sit on the other side. I know, the worst. But we're sitting in the gazebo, drinking, eating, chatting, and some people started to go away. So then I got on top of him. And he was like, is there anyone? So I could see, behind him. I was like, is there anyone on your side? He's like, no. He's like, is there anyone on my side? No. So we started making out and like my top came off for like a couple seconds. And I was like, wait, we shouldn't do this. There could be cameras. He's like, there's no one here. And I was like,
there
okay.
Could be cameras.
And then you're like, well, it's a college campus. You know how many times this gazebo's probably seen boobs or anything?
Exactly. There's so much shit that's happened in that gazebo at night.
But yeah, so then that was Thursday, and then yesterday he came over, and I thought we were going to have sex, just because I wanted to have sex with him the week prior. there was a lot of emotional, I wouldn't say overload, but there was just like a lot of emotion tied to everything we did last Saturday that I was like,
Sure,
if I have
that's
sex on top of that, I think it's just going to be a lot. And
Right.
I just needed to process a lot of the stuff that like I've never experienced before and whatever. So then I thought, okay, well now I kind of know what's going to happen, you know, when he comes over, and I just feel more comfortable around him already. So maybe we'll have sex today. So he came over and we started making out, and I pull away and say something about just my kissing. I start talking about my kissing style or whatever. Nothing like bad about him or us kissing. And he was like, I'm going to say something and I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I'm like, great, fuck. He's like, your breath is kind of bad right now and you might want to brush your teeth. So that statement alone really fucking got to me and made me feel really shitty about myself.
Yeah.
Because
that makes sense.
Because here we are, you know, we've been making out for maybe 10 minutes or so. And after 10 minutes, I decided to take a pause and just kind of talk to him for a minute. And then he said that. And I was like, I mean, I feel bad that, you know, you've been kissing me and my breath hasn't been that great. But also, I don't understand why my breath isn't that great because I haven't eaten anything. And I had a couple of slices of pineapple right when you were here. But I ate a lot of food when you had brunch at my place and you didn't say anything about my breath. But so I brushed my teeth and I was just really fucking embarrassed and I just felt really off about it. And he felt sorry for telling me. I was like, no, I want you to tell me if my breath is bad, you know? But at the same time, I didn't want you to come over and my breath be Listerine fresh. And then I'm like, I don't know. I felt really off when he said that.
Which that's okay. Like that makes sense. And I'll tell you, that's I don't have many insecurities, but that for some reason, something must have, I think I've talked about this before, how I always have gum in my mouth. That I remember I talked about it when I hooked up with a trans girl and got it wrapped all around her junk because I still had gum in my mouth. Remember that? We talked about that.
I don't remember the wrapping around part.
Well, it was stuck. It got it stuck everywhere because I had it in my mouth, in the corner of my mouth, and then it popped out. Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, and
that.
I don't know what it was, something when I was a kid, but something. So I've always had gum in my mouth. I used to I idolized Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory, where what's her face would put the gum behind her on her banister at night and put it behind her ear when she couldn't chew it. And I got gum cut out of my hair when I was 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that age range because I read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and I was trying to stick it behind my ear. And so I something, I don't know, when I was a little kid, someone said something and it stuck with me forever. But so that's something that actually would really bother me. Because I am very cognizant of that. Even I talked about when we went out with the Spicy Little Pisces and we were walking to the car, I was like, "Hey, do you want some gum?" And I had a piece of gum for myself, and then we made out for a while because we both had gum. That was the go-to sign. But so I understand that would mortify me. And
I was mortified, yeah.
Yeah, even though I would appreciate the person being honest because I wouldn't want them to have to deal with that because I don't like if I've ever had to kiss somebody that has bad breath. I have not enjoyed that experience. And so I would rather tell somebody, so it's nice that he communicated that in a very kind way and didn't just push you off and be like, "Your breath stink, bitch," because that would have been right. Can you imagine?
Worse, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was
your
good,
breath stink, bitch.
Yeah. But I can understand why you'd be upset too. It's very reasonable and very normal to be to have that affect you.
Oh man. And I just completely, I wouldn't say fell apart, but I just, from being ready to go and in the mindset of, okay, now we're gonna, eventually get off my couch and go back to my bed and then we'll I was in that mental state. And then he said that and I had to take 4 steps back and I was like, oh fuck, it really made me feel self-conscious. And I don't normally feel self-conscious, but that made me feel really bad about myself. And he was like, well, your breath smelled like it was like salsa. I'm like, I didn't even have anything salsa. It just didn't make any sense to me. I was like, it's fine. I'll brush my teeth, but I'm just so fucking embarrassed. And he knew I was embarrassed. And then he kept trying to kiss me after I brushed my teeth. And I was like, I just can't right now. Let me just be embarrassed. And I was taking shots at myself, making jokes, trying to lighten the situation because that's how I deal with awkward shit like that. I make myself the butt of the joke. And he was like, he's like, you don't have to say anything. It's fine. And I don't, that kind of really fucked me up yesterday. And then, I mean, we still had fun and we didn't have sex yesterday either. And we still fooled around, but I just felt really off from that was how it started. And then, things got better, but I just the whole time I just felt a little off. So I think you forgot about that like after a couple of hours, but that was just kind of in the back of my mind. Like when we were kissing, I was like, I really hope,
Yeah, no, that could fuck with you. They really can, because it's something you don't think about. And so when it happens, you start like replaying everything in your head, and it's very easy. So that's understandable. I mean, you guys still fooled around for a while, I'm guessing. Then you said a couple hours.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
we had fun, but I'm also currently on my period too right now, TMI. But then I was getting self-conscious because okay, if he goes down on me, I'm already like my breath is already like supposedly really bad. So how do you think my vagina is gonna taste right now? Because I'm on my period and
Sarah.
like I went there. I was like, oh, that's so embarrassing. Like, how many guys have kissed me that have never said that I have bad breath? Like, then I just started going there, and it just made me even more self-conscious. And then I was like, I'm just so not into doing anything physical right now. I need to take a pause and let's just watch something on Hulu, or let's just do something else because I'm not really feeling it right now. So, yeah.
Okay.
So that was yesterday. I mean, like I still had a great time with him, and I think we're still going to continue to see one another, but I've never experienced Saturday, and then I never experienced yesterday. So, right. Which are both Saturdays, but whatever. Yeah. So
highs and lows.
Yeah. So I don't know what we're going to do next, because I told him too, I don't want our relationship to be all about sex. And we're always planning, the weekend is when we're going to hang out and be at my place. And then we find socially distant dates and things to do. So it's just, I don't know. It's just weird.
How are your conversations and things otherwise?
I mean, they're great. We talk when we do any video date, we talk for 3 hours at the minimum. Okay. And everything's fine when we're hanging out together. But I think he's not the best texter. So that also gets to me a little bit, because I'm always the one texting him first. And then he doesn't text me back for 6 or 7 hours. And either he's napping or he's studying for something or doing something. And I don't know, I'm just not used to that either. And especially it hit me hard last Saturday when I just experienced all of that first time stuff. And then
right.
He wasn't really texting me a lot. And then I just felt even shittier about myself, because I'm like, I'm experiencing this sub drop right now, which I didn't realize that was a sub drop. And then he wasn't texting me a lot. So then I felt as if, he got what he wanted or whatever. And then now he's just done with me. So, and I told him, I was like, I'm projecting a lot of past shitty fucking men onto you. And that's not fair. But you have to understand, I have really, for the past 3 years now, experienced shit people for the most part. Right. They only want sex from me. They don't want to get to know me more. And because our sexual relationship is more intense, and then we don't really talk that much, or we take long breaks in between, it kind of fucks with me a little bit too.
Well, the only thing I would say is, and I know you told me this off air, and I think we talked about it on the episodes that are on Patreon, the little bonus things, but he told you ahead of time that he's just not very good at texting. Like, that's just one thing. Yeah, he did. And the other thing I would say is, it sounds like you said when you have video dates, when you FaceTime, et cetera, like you have pretty substantial conversations for hours on end. And so maybe like also in his mind, it's like those are the good conversations, and like the texting back and forth. Because in my opinion, to a degree, like it would be better if people did text less sometimes. Like sometimes you save it so you have something to talk about when you actually have conversations. And if you imagine what dating was like years ago, obviously before there was texting, even before, everyone had cell phones, people would, you might talk to someone once a night, or maybe every couple days. You might talk on the phone whenever everyone's working full-time jobs. And then when you'd have plans on the weekend, that's when you'd kind of share everything that happened. And so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's something you can get used to. It doesn't mean that he's not there or interested in you. It just means that maybe he's saving the conversation for non-small talk.
Yeah. And I know, and he's said, small talk is not his thing. And I said, that's fine. I don't want someone who's constantly texting me and checking in every fucking hour or doing anything like that. But it's the weird sexual relationship we have, mixed with coronavirus, mixed with not being super busy throughout the day, and I'm not talking to a lot of people anyways. And I just I want to talk to him more, and then I don't because of I know his style, It's just I'm trying to find that balance and not be upset when like I haven't heard from him all day today.
Right.
But yesterday, we spent 5 hours together. So
and today's Mother's Day, so he might be spending time, with his stepmom, or maybe I don't know where his mom is or whatever, so
yeah. I know, but I'm just trying to find that balance of
right.
stopping. I just felt really fucking needy last week because of all the emotions and stuff, and I was like, you are not this fucking insecure, you are not this needy. Why are you wanting to be this needy right now? This is not something you normally do. I just didn't feel like myself. So I'm just
it's okay. You recognized it. That's important.
Yeah.
And the thing is too, is you have been more responsive. Like I know when you get busy, when you're busy at work, like before all of this, I would text you and I might not hear from you for 4 hours before you reply back. Sometimes. And now you reply back like pretty quickly. So like I've noticed a difference in how quickly you reply. So maybe once things kind of, do get a little bit more where you're working your normal schedule a little bit more, it might be something where you won't notice as much because you're not just sitting down, sitting around twiddling your thumbs.
That's true. So
you're not sitting around restraining yourself to the bed, trying to masturbate.
I cannot even believe I just shared that, but here we are.
I just love the idea of that. Like that just makes me laugh so much. Just you restraining yourself to do it, and I mean, it makes sense to a degree. It does.
Oh God, I cannot believe I shared that, but here we are, and there's no shame in it, and it was great. I had a good time. So yeah, So once I learn more about continue to learn more about the BDSM community, maybe we could talk about more learnings and do more episodes on.
Yeah, no, I think it would be a good idea to do an episode on that because we haven't really done. We did a fetish episode like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and it was really just an ABCs of.
Well, there was so much to talk about.
Yeah.
There's so many little things we can talk about, and that would be good. And if once you become a professional at it, it'll be worthwhile to discuss.
Professional. Stop. All right. So I think we've talked enough about my sexual history and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it has been quite a first half of our episode, and I think we're already at time. We don't have time to talk about me.
We don't have time to talk about you. We have time to talk about you. Come on.
Do we? Really?
Well, okay. We're only recording every other week, so we better just give a little bit more. We're not going to know about your life for a whole month if you don't talk now.
I mean, that's probably true. That is a good point. What do I have to talk about? Well, I think last time I talked, I had the Spicy Pisces over. We played board games,
right?
And then I just went. It was late. I just wanted to go to bed and didn't want to fool around. Even though I think I probably could have, based on the snap she sent me the next day, but I didn't. I just wasn't in the mood. And then there is somebody that I've talked about a little bit that I kind of have a bit of a crush on, and I went over. She invited me over to her place last week sometime, and I was just chatting. I was like, "Oh, when you're available, we should hang out." And she said, "Well, I'm available tonight," and I had no plans, so I was like, "All right, I'll come over." So I drove over. She lives in a house with her sister, and they each have 2 kids. So it's the 2 women and 4 kids. Yes, I sent you a snap of all their kids running around like crazy that night.
I know. I was like, "Oh God, what is going on?"
But I always love seeing her, and we always have a great time. Like we went, she and I went grocery shopping while her sister was watching the other kids, and picked up stuff to make homemade pizzas and make cook dinner for the kids, and then dinner for all of us. And so because I got there at like 4 p.m, and then we started drinking. I brought some drinks, and they're heavy drinkers, so they were drinking when they want to go, and they kept making me drink. Like I had 1 drink, and she's like, drink this faster. It's time for you to have another drink. And so yeah, and like made me do shots, just straight liquor. Yeah, I know. It was. I was like, but I don't want to. Like, tough, you're doing it. And so, I mean, I didn't protest too much, but and we had a great time, and like I really like spending time with her, and I'm like, she's someone that I would like to be a part of her life, but I don't think she's in a place. It's hard to describe this in a way, but I've talked about it in the past. She's somebody who doesn't feel like she deserves somebody nice in her life. Like all the men that she's ever been with have been shitty, like just shitty. The father of her first son killed himself, but he was a shitty. Yeah, he was shitty. the father of her second kid is also just a very abusive person. And anybody that she's like dated have just been pretty much terrible. And I think that she does that to herself because she just doesn't feel like, why would she deserve anything? And this sounds probably like a pattern with me, because this is how it was with the Tinkerbell, you know, as well. And several people
shitty men, and then they meet you, realize they deserve better, and then you help them, and then
and then who knows? And then but which sounds like I'm some amazing person. I'm not. I just know how to listen and how to care for, like, I care for somebody, and I refuse to use somebody. That might have been me in the past, and I don't want to do that. You know, I want to be somebody who's there for someone, and she's somebody that I want to be there for, someone that I would like to support and help. And I remember towards the end of the night, her youngest had fallen asleep and in her bed, and so she was like, I don't know where you're gonna sleep, and she was a little drunk. She was like, I don't know where you're gonna sleep. She was like freaking out about it, and we were out in the garage playing pool, and I went in to like pee, and then I saw that her son was like asleep in her bed, and I just picked him up and brought him to his bedroom and tucked him into bed, made sure he was fine, you know, and everything and all that. And I went back in and I was like, okay, he's in his bed now. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, I put him in his bed. I just tucked him in his bed. He's fine. And she legitimately started to like tear up and say, nobody would ever like do that. And like, it's just such a sweet thing that you would do that. I was like, it was no big deal. I just literally just like picked him up, a little tiny kid, and just, you know, carried him to his bed and tucked him in. Like, why is that? And she was just like, you know, she's just like, you take care of things, you know, like, she really kind of whenever she gets too drunk, Sue will start talking, and she's always like, huh?
Oh no.
Oh
she
no.
says what?
Well, she's always just like, oh, this isn't good. Or like, I can tell that she wants to say things sometimes, and she gets too drunk and then feels like she's going to do something she regrets. We've never had sex. We've made out a few times. We like, and everything like that. And we've fooled around, but that's it. And I think she worries that she's going, like, we're going to have sex and then I'm going to just leave her or something like that. And we haven't even had a conversation about how I feel about her in that sense. So it's a very weird situation, but we, drank for a while. I went to bed at like 1 a.m, and I slept until like 3:30 in the morning, 4 a.m. And I woke up and I was like, I need to be back in my own bed. I am ready to go home. So then I like got dressed and got all my stuff and, locked the door behind me and drove home at like 4 a.m. and, and that was it. So that's been my only real experience, I guess. Otherwise, I'm not really doing much for dating, dating wise.
Okay. So I just don't want you to be always the fixer in a relationship. And
yeah,
you even said you have that pattern with Tinkerbell and with other people who I forget their nicknames. Dirty Dancing, yeah.
The Eccentric, actually, 3 of them in a row were kind of like that, and it's been like that in the past too.
I know, and I don't know.
It's who I am, though. Like, that's the thing, is I'm the type. I like to take care of people. I like to help people realize they're worth more. Like, it's something there's a reason that we started this podcast. It's
fair, but there's like someone had told you, and I can't remember who, that they don't feel like they can ever help you with anything. Maybe it was your ex-wife who said that.
No, it wasn't my ex-wife. It was Tinkerbell, actually.
And they could never help you with your problems. That you're always the one.
They felt like it was unfair that they would always need me and I would never need them. And I feel like that's most people that I would date would feel like they can rely on me, and not that I can't rely on them, but that they need me because of I provide a good amount of, I don't know what it is, whatever I provide, something that they enjoy, and that I would never need them because I'm independent. And that unfortunately is true. I don't need anybody. And like,
well, I hate that you say that, though, because
it is true. And I don't want somebody who wants to, like, who needs to be, like, to feel that way. Like, I don't want to, like, if I was with somebody who wasn't needed, someone who didn't need me, that would be okay with me. If I was with somebody who we were just together and got along great and everything and had a connection, that's fine. But I do well when I'm needed because I know how to do that. I know how to provide comfort and help people appreciate themselves and build their confidence and get some self-respect and that power back. And I know how to do that.
But I don't think you should always be the fixer. And that's what I think in the past, you've always been that fixing person.
I've always been that person, just generally. I've always been the person people come to when they need something or they know.
In all your relationships and all your serious
relationships and most of my friendships. I mean, I'm the person somebody calls randomly, hey, do you know about this? And I always know about whatever it is, or how do I do this? And I can usually, if I don't know it, direct them to someone who will. So that is my life. I am a fixer. And it is one of those things that I enjoy. Like I'm active in our Facebook group because I enjoy being able to help people, and I enjoy being able to offer my input, whether it's wrong or not. Like just to at least say, hey, this is how I see it, and maybe try to help people stand up for themselves or realize that they shouldn't feel shame or feel bad or etc. So it does make it hard. That's why I'm difficult to date. That's why I'm very difficult to date.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to need somebody. Like I'm never going to need another person in my life. I will like it. What benefit I get out of being in a relationship is the emotional strength I get from that. I get the physical intimacy. I get all those things actually do fuel me in the sense that like that's how I feel. That's like that. I say that this sounds so weird, but that kind of powers me to be there to help other people. Like being able to feel comforted and loved at home allows me to help more people as well.
Motivates you. Yeah.
Maybe motivates me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, it's a weird, and I know that it's tough. So I don't mind finding people that I can help, because I'd rather be helping someone. And if I can be in a position where I help her, because I'm very attracted to her. I'm absolutely into her. And if I can help her for a while, and if for some reason she did decide to leave, that's okay too. Like as long as she's happy, that's what matters. Like as long as someone finds happiness, if it's not with me, that's okay too. Like I'm not the source of happiness. But if I can help people maybe figure out how to get on the right path to it, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. When I'm dating, I just don't look at it. I don't know. I wouldn't date. I mean, I'm not going to date you, but I'm saying, I wouldn't date someone who just felt like they always needed to solve my problems.
Well, and I'm very careful about that. And I agree, because that's one thing men are known for is like, instead of just listening, they try to fix things. And I've been saying I'm a fixer this whole time, but that is a big part of it, is just listening. And sometimes just listening and just showing compassion and empathy is all that you need to do. That's what I mean by fixing. I don't mean like saying, "Oh, this is your problem. I'm gonna fix this," or "I'm gonna fix you."
You have all these things wrong with you, and I'm gonna change you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's not right.
And I knew that's not what you were meaning, but I think that is also important to clarify.
No, I'm glad you clarified that. Yeah. So it's something where I don't want to fix. Like I don't want to fix someone. I don't think someone's broken or wrong. I want to just show them that they're worth more. And the way to do that, the way that I, as a quote unquote fixer, do that is by listening and by being compassionate and by helping and just just supporting, being supportive and loving.
I guess that makes more sense. I think when you originally told me this, I was like, wait, why are you always the one that has to help people? Why is no one trying to help you? But that's kind of, and we've dissected love languages and that shit before, but that's kind of something that you enjoy doing in a relationship.
I do.
Not as a means of control, not as a means of like belittling another, but just actually help the other person, and that connects you even more and fuels your relationship. And
yeah, that really is important to me, is to be able to is to help people. Like I feel like we're all trying to grow. I spent a long time trying to learn who I am and grow as a person, and so I should be with someone that I can also like help them as they grow too. And it was funny the other day we were chatting, and she was telling me something that she did that fucked up. That she fucked up in some way. Like she was drunk and said something to somebody that pissed them off, etc. And I was like, yeah, but you were drunk, like, and you weren't wrong what you said to them. That just maybe wasn't the right time. And she's like, listen, I know that you always have my back, and like that that like you're always gonna like back me up no matter what. She goes, but you can tell me that I fucked up sometimes. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have said it, but you weren't wrong. And so at least you weren't lying. And so I support that. Be honest, even if it's, sometimes being honest is better than not saying anything. But I just thought it was funny that she called me out on that too. She was just like, that I know, like in your eyes that you're my biggest cheerleader and you're going to support me no matter what, which is just, that's important. So I don't know. So we'll see. It's probably nothing's going to happen from this. I'm sure, we will find out. She and I need some like one-on-one time together, I think, without the kids around and without her sister around and just us. And that might change things. So we'll see if that happens.
Okay. Well, keep us posted on that because I'm interested to see if and when it goes anywhere. And
And if not, well, I will survive. I always do.
Oh man. Okay. Whatever. I will survive. I will survive. I'll be just fine.
I'm happy being single. I'm okay with that too.
I know. Yeah.
So, but if I find something I'm into, like I am into her, like it's something where I want to at least try to get to that point of finding out, getting a yes or no out of it. And that'll be the next, the thing that I have to get to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Now we don't have to wait a whole month to hear about your dating life. You got that out now. Good for you.
That is true. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll be back with the rest of the episode. So we are pieces of garbage.
Oh, we're just going to start this section off with starting with garbage. Okay.
Right? I mean, aren't we, though?
No, we kind of are the worst.
Yeah, and the reason we're the worst is because we have a form that is on our website, on datingkindofsucks.com, where people can submit questions. It's not a contact form. It's like a Google form. And apparently, over the last 2 years...
You had to throw that in there, too.
There have been people submitting questions that we were not getting notifications for and didn't realize until Google sent us to our email account a random, like, here's a summary of your form results.
We're like, oh shit,
and I looked it up. Yeah, I was like, oh my god, people have been asking for advice since 2018, and we have not given them the advice. I feel so, but we both felt terrible.
Yeah.
So we decided today would be a good time to go into the mailbag and pick 4 or 5 of them and try to quickly answer them. We're going to try to tear through a bunch of them to get through, so it'll be a variety of topics, and try to get just see what we can do as far as getting through these, and then apologize and say that maybe. For future listeners,
email us or DM us. Please direct message us instead. We'll see those immediately.
Yes. And what is our email?
datingkindofsuckspodcast@gmail.com. We check that inbox occasionally, like every other day.
I have that open actually all the time, so I see it every day. Yeah. So if you email us now, we will get it directly. But before, for some reason, we set up the Google form, and I think it was so people could email us anonymously. I think when we first started the podcast too, so we didn't know if people were actually ever going to submit anything, and I don't.
So we never saw them submit anything, so we just forgot about that feature, and here we are now.
So here we go. Let's go ahead and dive into these. I will read the questions. Yes, yeah. This is a late night show. We'd have like a little like graphic that popped up that's like Sarah and Adam's mailbag, or something like that. But,
love it.
Yeah, that was great, right? So I'm going to go ahead and read our first email, and I don't know I didn't put the dates in when I put this into our agenda, so I don't have the dates from this, but most of these are from 2018 and 2019. So
great.
I know. So here we go. This one is from Jessica. Hello from a fan in Singapore. I've been seeing a guy for 2 months now. We're both 30, met on Tinder, and had been on 15 dates, including a mini trip away until Corona got worse here 2 weeks ago. Well, I guess this one actually wasn't from 2000.
This is a recent one. 2020.
It's all right. Prior to this, things were great. He was never a great texter. Sarah just talked about that.
I know. I feel like this is really relevant to me.
But I didn't mind putting in more effort because he was so good in person. When I asked about exclusivity, he said, of course we are. Now, however, because we try not to hang, it's hard not to interpret his bad texting as waning interest. 3 days ago, when I expressed anxiety about both the isolation, feeling disconnected from him, and us losing momentum, he made immediate plans to meet up. But then while we were together, he acknowledged he was bad at it, but only that the situation was temporary, and talked about strategies on how I could cope with the anxiety. Am I entitled to ask someone to try harder this early on in a relationship? How should I go about this? Well, this doesn't sound like it was. This sounds just like.
Refer back to the advice Adam just gave me 5 seconds ago.
I know, actually, this is weirdly. appropriate.
Yeah, no. So now that Adam and I have been talking about this, just give it some time. Obvious.
That's what I say. If you're great in person, if your conversations and when you actually have conversations, you're good. Maybe the texting isn't that important.
Exactly. It's not, you also don't have a lot going on in your day right now, which is something I realized when you told me that of your communication style might have changed a little bit. And yeah, so might not be that big of a deal. And I also think this is the same thing for Master of None. The second I say anything about wanting to talk more, or like get on a FaceTime date or communicate more, like this guy, he's really responsive to be like, okay, let's do it. And that's a good sign. So I don't think the texting is that big of a deal. It does, trust me, I feel you. It sucks, and you feel like there's less of not the less of a connection, but it's just off. But I'm hoping that it'll go away.
Well, and here's the thing: is if it really does bother you that much, if it is significant enough that you are really concerned about how much he's into you, it's okay to say, it really is important to me to hear from you regularly. Like, it's something that matters a lot to me personally, and I would really appreciate if you'd put the effort in, because that shows me that you're willing to do something that you're not good at and make the effort. It's okay to say that. And, you know, and that goes for Sarah too. Like, it's okay.
Thank you for this advice. Yeah.
But it is okay to say that. And so I would say that might be, if it really does bother you that much, then say that. But that's something that, you know, you have to be able to express yourself. And if something is important to you, if the constant communication is that essential, then say something about it. Yeah.
And her question was, am I entitled to ask someone to try harder this early on? I mean, I've only been dating Master of None for a month now, and I need to have that I kind of want to have that conversation with him and just like, hey, this is how I've been feeling. Just wanted to let you know, like, this is just how I interpret it. And I know, you know, I'm pushing past things or my anxiety onto you, but if you could just text me.
Well, also, when you do talk to him, don't like make excuses for how you're feeling either. Like, you can just say, this bothers me. And I mean, because whether it's because of your past or anything, it bothers you. And so it's okay to be like, hey, this bothers me. And I know it's not your fault, and I'm not blaming you for this. I'm telling you that this bothers me, and that, you know, it's something that I would like you to try to make an effort with.
Yeah. And see where it goes from there.
Yeah. And with this one, are you entitled to ask someone? Yeah, you've been on 15 fucking dates. You've been on a mini trip away.
A mini trip.
That. You can absolutely, you were entitled.
Yeah. All right.
There's one down. All right.
Woo!
Now, our next one is a fucking
from the bag.
doozy. Yeah, I know.
The second question.
Sarah Adams mailbag. All right. The next one is, like I said, it's a fucking doozy. This one's from Leslie. And I'm going to read through this. I might have to cut out some of this because there's a lot, but we'll read through this here.
Okay.
I've recently gone through something that left me confused, but after catching up on the last few episodes of your podcast, I believe you explained exactly what I went through. I started talking to this guy on Hinge February 18th. He quickly wanted to move things off the app and onto text. The conversation was flowing, so I figured, why not? I have one of those texting apps so that I never have to give any of these guys my actual phone number, so that's also why I didn't mind. We had our first date February 28th, we had another date the week after, and our third date the week after that. Our first date was nice. We talked about our interests, and he was amazed with everything I had to say, even if it wasn't that fascinating. He would tell me he loved how caring I was, and he could tell I was a very sweet person. And I told him I really wasn't, and nothing I told him can even confirm that. By the time our date ended, he was already talking about getting one of those memory boxes so we could put our ticket stubs to movies we go watch and other stuff in it. Jesus Christ. Okay.
Oh my God, I'm shaking my head at that already. Oh my God.
I found it a bit strange, but decided to go on another 2 dates with him. On the third date, we happened to go to a craft store afterwards, and he bought a memory box because he couldn't wait to start filling it up.
Oh God.
Well, that same weekend we went on lockdown because of the coronavirus, so we wouldn't be able to see each other. We were finding ways to watch shows or movies together through apps and staying connected. The more we talked, the more I realized that he was mirroring whatever it is I said. If I said I really liked Marvel movies, he would say, I love that we have so much in common, like our love for comics and our collection of band tees. But yet he didn't really like any of those things until I mentioned it, and he would bring it up every chance he got. Also, whenever I would have a controversial opinion, he would say, you always open my eyes to see things differently. You're so right. He really had no mind of his own. The messages also started getting repetitive. The day would go like this. Good morning, Queen. It's a beautiful day today. How did you sleep? What's for breakfast? What are you having for lunch? What are you having for dinner tonight? It got so irritating, which I know we were in lockdown, so what else would there be to say, but still. Oh, and yes, you read that correctly. He would call me queen. The first week of lockdown, he told me he loved me. We had only been on 3 dates. I never said it back, and I also didn't make it into a big deal because he said he doesn't understand why people make it into a big deal when it's said. He would tell me every day, I love everything about you. You surprise me every day. I love how passionate you are about things. I don't know what I did to deserve someone so perfect. I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have you in my life. Every time he would say that stuff, I would roll my eyes because I just don't believe any of that. I think it's so overused. I wanted to tell him I didn't want to talk to him anymore, but I felt like maybe I was just being too picky and not giving him a chance. Fast forward to May 2nd. He mentioned that he wanted to buy us each a Nintendo Switch. I told him that he shouldn't because that's way too expensive for a gift. Well, he didn't listen to me and he bought them anyways, and he wanted to come drop it off. There was no way I was going to tell him where I lived because I was already getting a bad feeling about him. So I made up an excuse and he said I could pick it up at his place, and that way I could meet his parents. Jesus Christ.
Even better. Oh, God.
I told him I felt uncomfortable with the idea of meeting his parents and accepting the Nintendo Switch because it was way too soon for all of that. He got upset and said I was sending him mixed signals and then asked if he was just a fling. He then went on to say that the reason he bought the game system for me was because it was a gift and he wanted to make things official and asked me to be his girlfriend. He got offended because I wouldn't take his gift, and then he called me because he wanted to discuss this over the phone. He went on about how he's tired of getting used and how girls only use him, and that all he wants is to find someone who's going to love as hard as he loves. I told him that I think we should stop talking because he was moving things way too fast, and I honestly didn't believe that he loved me. I told him I think that he loved the feeling of what we had, but not me specifically. He then started, quote-unquote, crying and said, "Why do you hate me? Why does everyone hate me? You're already talking about hating me in the future." He then went on to ask me if I was bipolar. I told him I didn't want to waste his time, so it'd be best to end things now rather than later. And he said, "You won't have wasted my time because you had no impact on my life." Then shortly after, he apologized and said he was sorry, and that he just got frustrated because I was giving up, and we could work through this if we just set some boundaries. I was already tired of getting nowhere with him, so I said, let's do this. Let's take a break so we can clear our head, and we'll regroup on Wednesday. He said, "No, fuck that. We're in quarantine, bitch," and then he hung up. I haven't heard from him since. All the time he was feeding me bullshit about how he was a gentleman. He really overused that word, but yet he acted like the complete opposite during the end. So then she says, after telling this little story, "So far, the 2 guys I have talked to on dating apps have been the type to rush things and want to jump into a relationship. I told myself that I don't want to have a relationship with someone until I at least get to know them for 3 months first. I feel like that's good enough time to see some of people's flaws rather than just date someone for a month or something, agree to be in a relationship, and then end up finding out why they're a terrible person. Guys I've been in relationships with show their best sides when they're trying to make me their girlfriend, but then end up becoming a completely different person once they have me. I'm trying to be more cautious of the red flags that they put off in the beginning that I would always ignore because I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. So my question is, what I'm doing wasting a guy's time? Am I going about dating all wrong? The last thing I want to do is waste someone's time. And this last guy really left me feeling like a bad person because I wasted his time, even though I wasn't purposely trying to do that."
You are not a bad person. And that story is just, let's just a moment of silence for what the fuck you just read.
Right. A moment of silence for your time that he wasted. He wasted so much of your time.
Oh my God. Oh, there's a lot to digest there.
Now, I did reply to her with some input, and then she wrote back because I was like, "How old are you?" Because I'm guessing like 23, 24. And she said she's 24 and he is 25 because I was trying to figure out their ages makes a little bit of a difference too.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was kind of what I guessed. And that they did not have sex when they went out. They fooled around a little bit, but then he got a little too handsy and she talked to him about it. And then she also sent me some screenshots in the email of texts back and forth from him. And he was weird. Like he just was talking about how, he's all this dedication. None of it was making sense. It was like this random string of words that was just pure mental diarrhea.
Diarrhea.
Yeah.
What?
So what advice would you have for her?
Well, okay. I just want to digest this a little bit.
Yeah.
So what strikes me as concerning is after 3 dates, he's wanting to build the memory box after 3 dates. That to me is like, but why?
Here's the funny thing. It was actually by the time the first date ended, he was already talking about the memory box.
I'm sorry. They went to the craft store on their 3rd date, and that's when they built it.
Because he was so excited.
That to me, and then the whole saying, "Oh, you're so interesting," and "Oh, I love this and I love that," and "You're so amazing." Love bombing.
That's what it is. That is clear as day exactly what was happening right then and there. Which and she said in the email, I was getting a weird feeling about this because I didn't do anything to deserve to be getting those responses, and the constant texts of checking in and hi queen and oh god, I mean, it's a little much and it's love bombing. So I just want to say, if you're wondering what those messages are, you've experienced anything like that, love bombing.
That's also, by the way, that's someone who is seeing your picture and he's making a choice based on being attracted to you on a purely physical level. I also want to say that maybe you're like you, Sarah, are dodging a bullet by not having text on a regular basis. If it's just going to get repetitive too, like that, maybe that's a good sign that texting is a little slower.
I don't want to tell you what I had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I sure as hell don't ever want a man, I don't even care, to ever call me fucking queen. Good morning. No, just no. Anyways. Then it sounds really like he's manipulating to the point of like,
oh yeah,
let me drop off this Nintendo, and oh, why me? And then he's playing the blame game. All of that sounds toxic as fuck. And my advice, well, not even advice, you dodged a fucking bullet and you know it, because you just not mature, throwing blame, saying, oh, why does everyone always do this to me? I just want to be loved. Why? It's just projecting all of his fucking bullshit onto her, like she's the bad person. She's not the bad person. She was trying to take it slow and be reasonable, and that was what he was doing, was just not okay.
Yep, he was trying to push her and make decisions for her, or make her feel guilty, like basically be like, oh, well, you want to be with me because here's a Nintendo, like you meet my parents, like all these things to try to guilt her, and she felt guilty about it. So like it was working to a degree. The best thing you could have done, Leslie, is after you went on, like, if someone quickly wants to move things off the app and on a text, I know you say, that's why you didn't mind, but there's a reason to do that, because you can start to see if someone's kind of crazy. And it sounds like he, even on the first date, even before your first date, I'm going to bet that if you went back and looked through your old text messages from between when you matched with him on February 18th and your first date on the 28th, he probably had a bunch of red flags in his text messages. Oh, probably, I'm going to guess there's probably something about, well, I hope you're not talking to any other guys. I bet there was something like that in there, or, something.
His profile too. I bet you his profile said something.
Probably
to some effect of, I just want someone who treats me with respect, or there's probably a line in his profile that said something that could have been a red flag as well.
I'm a gentleman who knows how to treat a lady, and I'm looking for someone who appreciates it. Something like that, maybe.
And it's the I'm a gentleman, I'm a nice guy. Why is the nice guy always, and we did a whole episode on nice guys. Why is it always me? I'm such a nice guy. Look at all the stuff I was trying to do for you, and you just treat me like shit.
I bet even his first message to you probably stuff like, hey, beautiful, or hey, gorgeous. He probably doesn't even remember your actual name.
True. So true.
So you were not wasting anyone's time. You were not the bad guy. You did not do anything wrong. When you see red flags, the only thing you did wrong, yes, is this line right here. I'm trying to be more cautious of the red flags that they put off in the beginning that I would always ignore because I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's what you did wrong. Yep.
Don't ignore them. That was your problem. Yeah. She's not wasting. Am I going about dating all wrong? Ignoring red flags. If that's one thing you could learn, just try to point them out a little bit more. And I think after experiencing something like this, you'll be more aware when you get a message like, hey, beautiful, or something to whatever he has sent you through the apps first. My other thought on this is, I wonder what he would think if he knew that she didn't give him her real number. If he would flipped shit. Because when you started reading I gave out this number so I wouldn't have to, I was like, oh God, he's going to find out about the number and get mad. But that didn't happen in the story, or, maybe it did and she just didn't send it to us. But I wonder about that too.
Oh, I'm sure he would. I mean, because he flipped out and said, fuck that, we're in quarantine, bitch. And then she hasn't heard from him since. So he obviously
called her bipolar. I cannot even believe.
No, that's just... That's kind of manipulation. It's gaslighting and emotional manipulation. Mm-hmm. To be like, is there something wrong with you? Is that why you don't appreciate all these things I'm doing for you? Like that's what that is. And it's fucked up.
You has the problem. And she was even asking us, like, am I the bad person here? Because she was being gaslit. And manipulated and love bombed, and yeah, that's all shitty things to experience from a shitty human being.
That guy had a bingo on shitty men on the shitty men
Wow.
card.
Yeah, he hit all of the, yeah. Oh god.
Well, good luck, Leslie. Let us know how it goes otherwise. And thank you for emailing. That was a recent one. That actually came in this weekend. So
Yeah.
that was, this one is older because this one in the end of it he talks about the meetup. And so the meetup is I think he was talking about the first meetup we did, actually. One of the ones I did, maybe, but I'm not sure. So this one,
bad.
yeah, yes. This one's from Mike. Hi, Sarah and Adam. Relatively new listener here. Since discovering the podcast, I've probably binged 8 to 10 of your episodes. Love the refreshingly honest and candid discussion and looking forward to becoming a more active member of your community. My question is this. Is there any way to tell what differences are between yourself in person and yourself over text? I've received feedback from dates lately that I can give off different vibes over text versus in person. I couldn't tell you offhand why. I don't feel like I change much over text. Here's a couple of my best guesses. Number 1, I'm not normally much of a texter to begin with, so I normally don't put a ton of effort into texting unless I really like someone. Number 2, it normally takes me a couple dates to feel totally comfortable with someone, so I'm probably more expressive after multiple dates than I am on the first date. And number 3, I have an autism spectrum condition, which can impact first impressions. I don't lead with this because autism is stigmatized, but it can affect things like my expressiveness. I've been told by dates and past girlfriends that can be hard to read. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Wish I could make it to the meetup tonight, but I'm in Toronto, so the Uber will be a little expensive.
Well, we missed you, Mike.
Yes.
I wasn't there either. If it was that meetup, I wasn't even there. So
Yeah, we don't know. And we missed you, Mike, and we missed your question. And you've been waiting at least, oh God, at least since December. We are the worst. I am so sorry.
Man, sorry, Mike. Oh man. Is there any way to tell the difference between text in person versus being in person?
That's a hard one. I'm going to guess that a lot of it comes down to the third point, that the autism spectrum condition can definitely impact first impressions, because I feel like by text, people can be more...
You have a little bit more time to respond too, you know? Like when you respond, you have more time to collect your thoughts and say something else. If you're not more of an off-the-cuff type of person, you might be able to be more expressive through text because you have a little bit more time to respond versus... Right. You know,
yeah, you do have the ability to, and you can actually think about it a little bit more. That might be one thing to do. I'm also wondering, you said different vibes. What you didn't say is whether or not people think you're better over text or better in person. I'm guessing better in person because that makes a difference too.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell the person, instead of doing text, if you really are worried about it, you use the record function. You know, you can record a text and you send it so it's a little audio message. And you can say, hey, I'm really bad at text. I don't feel like they really get my expression across, or I'm not very expressive by text and I don't want you, or something like that. You could try that. It might be a little quirky, but
I would maybe say that through text first and then suggest don't send that and say that. But no, because I've actually gone out with a couple guys that say, I'm not a great texter, or I just don't, I'm different a little bit over text. So, and then we end up meeting in person and it's fine. So I'm hoping that he's better in person than over text. That's what I'm assuming. But
well, and here's the thing is that when you're in person with someone, when you're face to face, if you say something and then you smile or your eyes light up or you look more serious or you look angry, then they can hear what you say and then use your body language to interpret that in whatever way you meant it. And if you are texting and you're texting the same thing and you don't use emoji because either you think emoji are stupid or you don't get the point or whatever, it can sometimes be hard to gauge the
5
tone.
words, the same. Especially if you're sending short messages and that conversation just doesn't have that much depth, then they're like, what does that mean? Or this guy seems stale, or,
One thing you can do, and this is something I do when I offer career counseling, when I do career counseling for people and interview counseling, is if they ask questions, answer their questions using their question. And what I mean by that is if someone says, do you like to go to the movies? Then don't just say yes. Say, I love going to the movies. If someone says, what are your favorite foods? Just don't say hamburgers. because like this just comes across boring. Just be like,
True.
I have a bunch of favorite foods, but I really like hamburgers. Like write it as an interview question. And if you treat it like an interview question, you're going to put more personality into it because you're also using more words to say it. And the more words you use, the more you're going to use things like adjectives that can actually give a little bit of sense of tone. So
that's good advice.
That might be a way if you don't know how else to try to convey who you are by text. That might be a way to do it. Or just say, listen, I'm a terrible texter. I'd rather talk on the phone. I'd rather FaceTime, do the audio, something like that. You can just say, people tell me I'm not the same on text, so I'd rather just be on the phone. That might be another solution.
I would be open about that first, and then I would try those techniques that you just mentioned and see where it goes from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Good advice.
All right. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Next one from the mailbag. This one mentions me probably because I'm divorced. That's why. This is from Jacob. Jacob says, Adam, you mentioned on your podcast that you usually mention being divorced on the first date. I've run into women recently who, upon finding out that I'm divorced and have an 11-year-old child, say no thank you. The biggest issue is with having children. People don't want a complicated relationship. You mentioned that this doesn't define who you are and people should get to know you before judging. Do you feel like this should be something placed in the profile prominently? Some argue that it is deceitful to not put it in the profile.
I think it changes when you have an 11-year-old child, though.
I agree completely.
That, like, you mentioned divorce because, look, you don't have kids and whatever, and it was so long ago, but you don't have any, and I'm not saying a child is baggage, but baggage.
A child's baggage.
I was trying to be kind to all the people who have children. But you have that. So, I mean, I don't recommend putting your 11-year-old in your dating profiles, maybe mentioning that you have a child in your, like, mentioning, father of an 11-year-old or something to that. And then that might spark the conversation to say, oh, so you're divorced, because that kind of implies it right there, or, that there was something in the past. Yeah. I mean, I'm not in that situation, but that's just what I think.
The divorce isn't the big deal. The divorce, the only time the divorce matters is if it's fresh and the ex is still somehow involved, which you would have some involvement with the ex because I'm guessing because you have an 11-year-old, so there's probably some type of custody or something, going on there, unless you have sole custody and, she's gone. But generally the divorce is less of the issue. But when you have the child, that creates the complications. So you can say you're divorced. I wouldn't worry about that part. I forget half the time to mention that I've even was married, to be honest. Now, I used to say that I mentioned on a first date, but like that was, now I'm just like, sometimes I just won't even like, it'll be, oh yeah, shit, I was married a while ago. Like I've been divorced for 10 years. I've been divorced for longer than I was married now. So I don't even think about it. But you should absolutely, in your dating profile, say that you're the father of a child, almost teenager, whatever you want to say, just something that shows. And I would put something about the age range because
yes, that is so important too.
Right. Because some people would be okay with
a young kid versus, oh, this is more fresh, or, oh, an 11-year-old. Well, 11-year-old is like, okay, they're older, they're more mature versus, oh, you have a 2-year-old. I don't know. That you don't know how people are going to gauge that age range.
An 11-year-old means, oh, you might be able to actually go out on dates and leave them home. They might be old enough to stay home alone. A 2-year-old means you probably don't have the free time that the person might want. Right. So I would try to put something about their age, like almost teenager, 11. You don't have to put their actual age if you don't want to. You don't have to put if they're a boy or a girl. You can just the fact that you're a father, of an adolescent is probably is absolutely worth mentioning in your profile.
Yeah, agreed. And I, like I said too, you don't have to put a photo of your child if you don't want to.
Don't. I would say absolutely.
I see a lot of people do that, and I'm like, I mean, it's your kid. Ultimately, you get to make that decision, but I don't recommend it. But I've seen a lot of people do that. I'm just
the reason I especially wouldn't is because I find a lot of women can be very judgmental about that. Then they assume that you're not a good father because you're posting a photo with your kid, which means you're not thinking about your child's safety and protection, etc. And child's privacy. So like a mom doing it I think would get less negative feedback than a father doing it.
Interesting. I don't know. I guess I see guys post photos of their kids on dating profiles all the time. I don't really think anything of it. Yeah, it lets me know they have a kid because normally they'll reference, oh, the child in the photo is mine, and the age there. But yeah, if just at least put it in your bio in some way.
My friend Scott, who's in the group and a listener, I've known him since high school or whatever. He I think most of his pictures are him with his son, and so he just put an emoji over his son's face to protect his privacy, and still shows, here's a fun picture of me playing with my son, and that's a good way to do it too.
Yeah, that's true. Cool.
All right. Moving right along.
Here you go, Jacob. Next one. Who's this one from?
This one is
anonymous. It looks like.
This one is anonymous. Yes.
Okay.
And this one, if I remember correctly, was from a while ago. And so this is like
a year ago
or
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, I love the podcast so much. You guys are hilarious and have helped me not feel so bad about being 31 and single. First of all, Sarah, you will probably hate me, but I just hooked up with one of my old friend's exes last weekend, and they had dated for about a year through college. But it was more like her being obsessed with him. It was bad. I was seeing his roommate, but we totally were attracted to each other. We just kept it to ourselves. He and his roommates would talk about how crazy she was. He would even tell me to tell her that he wasn't there so she wouldn't come over at times. That was 8 years ago, and she is happily married with 2 kids now. He recently found me on Facebook, and we were both single and decided to hang out. But he drove 4 hours to visit for a weekend. Is this crazy after not seeing each other for 8 years? And do I even need to bring it up to her? Part of me feels guilty, but the other part is like, okay, it's been so long and we're not even that close anymore. But funny fact, when he came over, I totally made a little cheese plate for us to snack on wine. I'm just stuffing my face and like, what happened to you the next day? He said he doesn't even eat dairy. Fucking tell me that shit. Had to share. I was dying when I heard this. Well, thanks again for having the podcast. I look forward to future ones and would appreciate some feedback.
Well, we're giving you some feedback like a year.
Years later.
Years later. Here's
what's that
feedback.
SpongeBob? There's that SpongeBob meme that's something like
4 years later.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
That's the wrong accent, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Sarah, I'll let you take this one.
I don't think it's crazy that he would drive 4 hours. Obviously, he was really excited to see her, that he was willing to drive 4 hours, and it was a way to reconnect. So I don't think that's like the craziest thing. How good of she said not really that great of friends. So
they were really close friends 8 years ago, and now they're not. Yeah. And she's married with kids now.
I don't even think that's important to tell her. If they don't, I wouldn't be like, oh, hey, by the way, fuck it. I mean, you guys don't talk anymore, and it's been 8 years, and you've moved on. So, yeah.
And I think if at this point, if a relationship came out of it and it's it would ended up being something serious, yeah, you could probably be like, hey, by the way, funny story, you remember so and so? Yeah, he and I just started talking to each other.
I don't think the girl would care.
I don't think so. Not after 8 years. Like that's a long time. I'd say you just get your freak on.
Yeah, seriously. Get your cheese plate on too. Shit.
Yeah. He doesn't eat dairy, just means more cheese for you.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. I make the cheese plate and they're like, I don't really like this kind of cheese. I'm like, well, excuse me while I stuff my face here.
Sarah, because you're such a cheese connoisseur when you're eating handfuls of shredded cheese out of the bag.
I sometimes class it up, Adam. I haven't ever made a cheese plate with shredded cheese, okay? So it's always been nicer, more expensive types of cheese. But yeah, that's cool that she made a cheese plate. Yeah, I don't see it as being that big of a deal. I don't think it's crazy that he drove 4 hours to see her. I think cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Absolutely not. All right. We have time for probably one more.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay. This one doesn't really have a question, but it's something that I think it'd be interesting to talk about. It's just a very brief one. They didn't put their name, so they want to stay anonymous. Because of every adult in my family getting divorced as a child, aunts, parents, grandparents, multiple times each, I'm actually terrified that I don't know what loving someone actually means, even as an adult. It makes me afraid to fully commit to my relationship, even though it's really great and I want it to continue. That's a tough situation.
Yeah. And I also don't see this one on our thing, so I can't even like reread it or pull from anything because you didn't even give me. You didn't even throw this one in the grab bag, so this is a surprise twist and turn for me.
Well, we had time, so I figured we'd just throw this one in there. I'm true. Throwing mail at you now.
So her parents are divorced. I was like half listening, to be completely honest. So I was looking for the fucking thing.
All right.
I am actual garbage.
Should we start this one over again?
Please just start it over.
Actually, hold on. No, let's do this. You can just edit this out of the episode here. It's going to go on the video episode, but you can go this. I'm going to copy and paste it into our agenda.
I was looking for as you started reading it. And
I went to
the
the forum directly because I knew I was looking at our time and I was like, oh yeah, it'd be a good time. Paste. There we go. Do you see it in there now?
Yeah.
You want me to read it again?
No. Well, no. I can cut it back. Welcome YouTube to how things go on our episodes. Oh, Sarah doesn't pay attention. Okay. So as someone who comes from a family who's divorced and then now extra stepmom or stepdad and mom are going to get divorced too. I don't think that I don't know what a good relationship looks like. I think early on, probably in my early 20s, I worried about that, but I think I have no problem understanding, like fully committing to someone and like understanding. If anything, from my parents being divorced, I know what a relationship that's fucked up looks like. And I've learned I don't want that, or I should not tolerate this, or like things like what my mom and dad compromised on in their relationships. I don't want that. So now I know, and yeah, it's taking me longer to be in a serious relationship, which I don't even know if I really want that right now, but I know when I find somebody, I'm going to know what that love works for me, like that type of love and how it's going to work for me. And I don't think it makes like me finding love harder. It's still going to be difficult, but I've just learned through watching other people in my family.
I think that's the right answer, is that the fact that you've watched every adult in your family get divorced means that you are going to be more cautious about getting a relationship. You're not going to jump into one because you've seen so many bad ones that you should learn from that. You should use those as examples of, oh, this isn't right. These are the wrong reasons to get in a relationship or get married.
Right.
That said, if you're afraid to fully commit, even though it's really great, well, maybe you need to figure out why. Therapy might be a good idea, actually. I would say that might help you understand some aspects of yourself. Maybe there's things that you're afraid of. Another thing is, no relationship is without its risks. And healthy relationships, you have to sometimes take that risk. You have to let yourself sometimes be vulnerable and get hurt in order to move on and have stronger relationships. If everything always happened perfectly, you would never learn anything.
Yeah.
So,
and relationships are so fucking hard. Now that I'm like trying to, now that I'm dating someone for longer, I'm like, ooh, this is harder to be more vulnerable. And things really aren't as fucking perfect as it looks in everyone else's relationships. And I forgot that. And that's okay. And I definitely agree with if that relationship is worth working on and you're just trying to process feelings, definitely talk about it in therapy. Definitely talk about the issues or the feelings that you're having with your partner, and that will hopefully help fix, or not fix the problems, but help you guys get through whatever it is that you're having issues with.
Yes, I think that if you can communicate that with your partner, that would make a big difference. If for some reason you don't feel like you can communicate this with your partner, maybe that's a sign that it's not the right relationship. Because in a good relationship, you could talk about these things and say, hey, listen, this is what I'm going through right now.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, well, good. And whatever your name was, when I was an anonymous one. So hopefully they listened. That was one of the earlier ones. So I know that one was from
2018, from the archive.
I think that was from 2018. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe by now they're not in that relationship anymore. Maybe they've made the leap and decided to be fully committed. But once again, we're going to reiterate. Yeah. Maybe
we're a little late to the party. No.
Maybe we're going to reiterate too that if you do have questions that you have, the best way to reach us is to email us at datingkindasuckspodcast@gmail.com. That is going to be the most effective way. That way, Sarah and I can both see it simultaneously, and we can decide to talk about it on air or just reply. Sometimes we just reply and we don't talk about it, and so. We're happy to do that, but that's going to work a lot better than on that form, which I need to go into and remove from the website.
Get off the website.
Get the fuck off there now. So we never have to do a mailbag thing again.
Right. You can also send us a direct message on Instagram at Dating Kinda Sucks. We're pretty responsive on there as well. And yeah, those are two easy ways. Or you can throw your questions and comments and concerns on our Facebook page, our Facebook group at Facebook.com/group/DKS podcast as well.
Yeah, that's a great community of people. There are 1,300 members and growing, and that way you're not just getting our opinions, but you can post something and you can get opinions of a bunch of people. And sometimes it's good to have that kind of crowdsourcing to really see what the best perspective is. If you are in the group and you want to post something and you want to be anonymous, you can always message me by direct message or email or whatever and say, hey, I'd like to post this question in the group, but I want to be anonymous, and I'll post it for you. And that way you can just read the answers and you don't have to worry about, your name being out there. And and you can, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can watch us on YouTube as well. Join us on youtube.com/datingkinda-sucks. And then finally,
if you've actually, since we pulled questions from 2018, if you've been listening since 2018 and have not given us a 5-star rating review on iTunes, since we grab bagged all of this is your chance to get on iTunes and write us a review on there. You can also follow us on Spotify if you haven't done that and you've been listening to us on Spotify for all this time as well.
Yeah, Spotify has a new function too where you can follow and then notify you when there's new episodes. So I recommend, even if you're on Spotify, unfollow and then refollow, and it'll allow you to do that because it's a new thing they just did. And that way you get notifications when we have new episodes, because right now we're doing them every 2 weeks. And the only exception to that is if you're one of our patrons. If you are on our Patreon, which is Patreon, patreon.com/DKS podcast, you can actually get access to cool little bonus episodes that we're doing in between, where it's just Sarah and I talking for 15-20 minutes about dating, about basically kind of like the first half of episodes, but first halves of each episode, but it's something that you're not going to see otherwise. And for as little as $5 a month, you can support us, which helps us pay for the podcast and eventually improve our equipment. And we're working on merchandise and doing all this shit that's going to be awesome. And that's at patreon.com/DKS podcast. And then of course finally, our website, datingkinda-sucks.com. It's due for a rehaul. I'm going to be rehauling it, I think, in the next couple months and making some changes on there and putting up our YouTube videos on there as well and doing all that stuff. So,
yay! Love it. I think
that's it.
We basically have 2 episodes in one. This has been, we're going to get close on 2 hours.
Fucking episode, I know. This is a 2-hour episode.
But take it all in because we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode. Thank you for listening.
Until next time.
Whether you're married or single or poly or ace, or hanging out with swingers back at your place, listen to us as we give no fuck on Tinder and Bumble and plenty of yucks, trying and having no luck, because we all know dating kinda sucks. Sarah and Adam are 2 of a kind. He says stupid shit and she doesn't mind. They're not doing this show to make any buck. Life as a chicken whose feathers they pluck. Why does it work? Well, here is the crux. They both know dating kinda sucks. Dating kinda sucks.